Have you ever been there? You know that moment when everything just, it freezes.
Oh, absolutely.
You're in a high-stakes meeting, maybe a really important phone interview, and someone asks you a question in English.
An unexpected one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know the answer's in there somewhere, but the pressure just hits, and suddenly your mind is just blank.
Or worse, it goes into that frantic, super slow motion translation mode.
Yes. It feels like you're trying to think through quicksand.
And that is the ultimate communication bottleneck. It's so frustrating, that feeling that your competence in your own language just vanishes the second you try to speak English spontaneously.
That panic, that hesitation, it doesn't just make you sound unsure.
No, it often means you give a much simpler or even less accurate answer than you're actually capable of.
And that's the exact hurdle we're really digging into today. We've gone through a whole stack of sources, from linguistics to performance coaching, and our mission is to pull out a practical blueprint for you. We want to give you the mental tools to get past that blank mind feeling and respond quickly and, clearly.
And if there's one core idea, one big revelation from all this material, it's this.
Okay.
Thinking fast and speaking smart in English has almost nothing to do with your vocabulary size, or your IQ for that matter.
Really?
It's fundamentally about using pre-established patterns, having a bit of strategic preparation, and, this is the big one, managing your mindset. It's a system, not some innate talent.
Okay, let's unpack that mindset piece first, because that sounds freeing, honestly.
It is.
We spend so much time obsessing over, vocab lists and complicated grammar.
But the research really suggests that perfectionism is what's slowing us down.
Right.
Yeah, if you look at the foundational shift you need to make, the key is that fast speaking comes from clear, simple thinking.
Not complex thinking.
No. The bottleneck, the jam, it happens because you're trying to do two really hard things at once. First, you're trying to form the perfect, nuanced thought.
Okay.
And second, you're trying to translate that perfect thought into a grammatically flawless English sentence, all before you even open your mouth.
That sounds absolutely exhausting. It's like trying to program a computer while running a marathon.
It's cognitive overload. I mean, our sources are very clear on this. Trying to compose a long, perfect sentence internally is the single biggest barrier to fluency.
Yeah.
The brain just can't do it in real time.
So the first practical step has to be just radical simplification. You have to stop trying to deliver a Nobel Prize speech on the spot.
Exactly. You have to give yourself permission to simplify your thoughts down to the core message.
So if someone asks, what's the biggest challenge for the project?
Instead of trying to build this beautiful sentence with dependent clauses in your head, your brain should just grab the key words, challenge, resources, timeline.
Simplify the thought first.
Then you build the sentence around that simple core.
Okay, but if we're just simplifying everything, how do we stop ourselves from sounding, a bit basic or mechanical?
That's a great question. We need a dependable structure, something that doesn't feel like a crutch, but more like a solid foundation.
Right.
And that's where we move from mindset to structure. Think of it like the difference between drawing freehand and using a template.
Okay.
What's so powerful is using these simple, ready-made English structures. We can call it a communication scaffolding.
Scaffolding. I like that.
This scaffolding means you never, ever have to start from scratch. You just plug your simple thought into a reliable pattern.
So what is that scaffolding? What does it actually look like in practice? Can you give us a blueprint?
Yeah, of course. A classic one, and one that a lot of our sources point to, is the point, reason, example structure. Some people call it the PRP method.
PRP.
The structure is the scaffolding. So P is for point. You state your main conclusion right away in a short sentence.
Get straight to it.
Exactly. Then R, for reason. You follow up with a short phrase like because, or the main reason is.
Okay, point.
And then E, for example, or evidence, you just provide one quick, tangible piece of support.
That's really powerful, because it shifts your brain away from complex grammar and towards simple organization.
Right.
So someone asking about project risks, instead of trying to build some masterpiece sentence.
You just use the scaffolding. You lead with the point. The biggest risk is the weather.
Okay.
Then the reason. This is because unforeseen delays will impact our entire timeline. Then the example. For instance, last quarter, we lost 3 days due to storms. And there you have it. A clear, structured answer that took almost no real-time construction.
You're just linking three simple ideas instead of trying to build one complex monster.
Exactly. You offload so much of that cognitive burden. And what's more, a structured answer like that, it just naturally sounds confident, even if the sentences themselves are basic.
So you're performing a controlled response, not a panicked one.
You got it.
Okay, so that brings us to the toolkit. If the structure is the foundation, what are the verbal shortcuts we need? The sentence starters, the pauses that let us build that scaffolding.
Right. So now we're talking about leveraging prepared language. And the most critical tool here isn't even a word. It's the strategic use of silence,
The pause.
the pause strategy.
That moment of panic.
Mm.
When your mind goes blank, that silence feels like a giant spotlight is on you,
It does. And so we rush to fill it with, and
which just makes us sound more nervous.
precisely the habit we need to change. Strategic pause phrases aren't filler. They are tools. They signal to the listener that you're taking their question seriously. Native speakers use them all the time.
Okay, so let's break these down. What are the essential pause phrases that you can start using, like today?
I'd put them in 3 buckets.
Oh.
First, what I'd call cognitive pauses. These are phrases that openly signal you need a second.
You're telling them you're thinking.
Exactly. Like, that's a great question. Let me think about that for a second. Or if it's complex, I need a moment to pull those points together. They're short, clear, and they signal processing, not panic.
They're like conversational lifeboats.
They are. The second category is affirmation and clarification pauses. These keep the other person engaged. They show you're listening even while you're structuring your answer.
Like what?
Simple things. That's an interesting point, followed by a beat of silence, or I see what you mean, and then you can add, my initial reaction is. It buys you time while also validating them.
Okay, I do have a question here, though. I mean, if you're just using these canned phrases, don't you risk sounding, I don't know, like a robot?
That is such a critical point.
Or even a bit condescending, right? That's a great question.
Exactly. And that's where your tone and delivery come in. The sources say the effectiveness is like 80% tone.
80%.
If you say, let me think, while looking panicked, it doesn't work. But if you make eye contact and you say it clearly, calmly, that's a good question. It projects confidence.
So the delivery is what turns it from a sign of weakness into a signal of deliberate thought.
Precisely. And that brings us to the last part of the toolkit, the transition starters.
These are the phrases that actually launch your PRP framework.
Yep. Dependable phrases like, in my opinion, or my perspective on this is, or to disagree politely, I respectfully see this a little differently.
You don't have to invent a transition. You just grab one off the shelf.
It saves so much mental energy. And you can use that energy to focus on the actual content of your answer, not the mechanics of the sentence. It's a total efficiency hack.
Which takes us right into the real world. I mean,
Right.
these techniques are great, but they have to work under pressure.
In real world situations, right?
They need to work in a tense negotiation or just, in rapid fire small talk.
And the sources do make a really interesting distinction between professional and social contexts. The principles are the same, patterns, pausing, but how you use them changes.
Okay, let's start with professional. Work discussions, meetings, interviews, places where clarity and confidence are everything.
In those high-stakes settings, you need to be very deliberate. If you use a cognitive pause like, let me synthesize those points, you absolutely must follow it up with a clear structure like PRP.
To maintain credibility.
Yes. In a fast-moving meeting, you don't wait for a perfect moment. You use a short transition starter just on the timeline to get the floor, and then you deliver your simple, structured point.
So the simplicity of the framework actually helps you be more concise, which is so important in a meeting. No one wants to hear someone ramble.
Exactly. Speed isn't just about less hesitation. It's about less rambling. Be sharp. Be economical with your words.
Okay, so what about the social context? Casual chats, small talk. Using a rigid P-pre structure there might make you sound like you're briefing a general.
Right. You'd sound like a robot. The structure gets much softer. The goal isn't a formal briefing. It's about keeping the conversation flowing naturally.
So you rely more on those affirmation pauses.
Much more. In a casual chat, you might say, totally, that's a great way to put it, and then pause before adding your own thought. For small talk, you'd use short, familiar patterns like, I agree, but I also think.
So the shift is, in a professional setting, the pause buys time for structure. In a social setting, the pause buys time for a more natural, genuine response.
You've nailed it. And in both cases, the underlying key is practice. You have to actively listen for chances to use these phrases and train your brain to default to a framework, not to panic.
And you mentioned this practice does more than just help your speaking.
It creates this amazing feedback loop. When you practice listening for patterns, you stop processing English word by word.
You're listening for the structure.
Yes, which boosts your listening speed and your comprehension. And the faster you understand, the more confident you are to respond. The faster you spot the pattern, the faster you can deploy your answer.
So we're moving away from seeing every sentence as some kind of linguistic Rubik's Cube we have to solve in the moment.
That is the perfect analogy.
Hmm.
You're seeing it as a predictable scale that you can play with muscle memory. When the structure becomes automatic, your mind is free to focus on the message. That's real fluency.
Wow. This has been a really practical deep dive into, well, the engineering of spontaneous speech.
It really has.
To sum it all up, we started with that awful blank mind moment. And we found the blueprint for speed isn't about knowing more words. It's about simplifying, structuring, and pausing.
That is the core takeaway. Fluency comes from using simple frameworks like PRP and strategic pauses to buy yourself thinking time. When you lower the mental effort of building a sentence, you automatically lower the anxiety.
And that's what really builds fluency.
Exactly.
So for you, the listener, putting this into practice means making a real shift in how you hear and process English every day.
And if fluency really is all about patterns and preparation, then here's a final thought for you to take away and explore. From this point on, how can you start viewing every single English statement you hear? An email, a question in a movie, anything, not just as information, but as a potential prompt. A prompt that requires one of the simple frameworks we talked about.
So you're training your brain to recognize the trigger.
Start identifying the pattern the question demands and practice just in your head deploying the right framework. Training that recognition muscle is the absolute key to shrinking your response time.
Recognize the pattern, deploy the framework, and train the panic right out of your brain. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.